As we all know by now, New York Jets fans, really fans of any NFL team, well aware of the fact that the time coaches and GMs and evaluators have to spend with their players seems to get less and less and less every time there's a new CBA. How did the Jets take advantage of some of the time they had with their rookie minicamp to take a look at some of their veteran, inexperienced players? We're going to take a look right now. I'm Glenn Naughton with JetNation Radio and JetNation.com. Be sure to log into JetNation.com where you can register and become a part of what is the most active Jets message board on the web. So we mentioned this during rookie minicamp, and I wanted to double back and kind of dig a little deeper, look a little bit closer. I know OTAs are underway, but really there's not a lot being reported on that in the news. Only a few sessions are open to the media. So there won't be a whole lot to talk about there for the most part. When stuff happens, when news breaks, we'll talk about that. When we hear anything on coaches, players, etc., we'll go over that. But really right now, it's been pretty quiet, which is typical for this time of year. But one thing that happened, as I said, a few weeks ago when the Jets had their rookie minicamp, immediately after the draft, and all teams do this, they bring in their rookies, they bring in a bunch of tryout guys. But teams will also bring in guys who are not tryouts, who are not recent draft picks, but guys who are already under contract with the team, but guys who are younger, who don't have a lot of experience. And I would imagine that for Aaron Glenn and his coaching staff and Darren Muji, for whatever it's worth, I'm sure there are guys on their roster who, from what little they've seen or heard, information they've gotten through word of mouth or watching, maybe Darren Muji as a former assistant may have watched some of these guys as they were coming out in the draft a year or two ago. Same with Aaron Glenn, the defensive coordinator. He may have been somewhat familiar with some of these guys, but now they're his guys. So whether it's I'm familiar with this guy and I want to verify what I already know, or I'm really not familiar with this guy, I like what I've seen on film, or I like what I've heard from people in the building, let me get an up-close look, because we're really limited. The number of practices teams have every year, you don't do doubles anymore in the preseason. So you're limited on how much time you get to put eyes on these guys. So I would imagine, and I'm just guessing here, but I would imagine if you're bringing guys in, it's because you've seen something you like, but you want to verify it or see more. It's possible it's guys they don't like and they want to confirm that, but bringing them in, that would, there's camp, there's whatever, but whatever the motivation, whatever the reason they brought these guys in, and some interesting names on the list. One really big surprise to me, just in terms of a guy who I've really only seen a few of his college games over the years and wasn't a highly touted pick. I bet he's a guy, if you mentioned to most Jets fans, they wouldn't even know he's on the roster. But the Jets wanted to see him in rookie minicamp again. So these are veteran guys, not as in, 5, 6, 7-year veterans, but guys who've been in the league for a year, maybe two. In the case of one guy, a few years. But let's take a look. Let's take a look at the 8 guys the Jets brought in and kind of try to get a feel for why each of these guys would have been brought in for the extra look. As we know, Justin Fields is your starting quarterback with Tyrod Taylor listed as his backup. As far as QB3, that's a battle between Brady Cook and veteran Adrien Martinez. Now, Cook, of course, with it being a rookie camp, was at the rookie camp, as you would expect. And this could simply be them wanting another arm there to throw to the receivers who were present. That's entirely possible. But they did bring Adrien Martinez in. Now, Adrien Martinez, it's interesting that, we talked before the Jets even signed Justin Fields, that Aaron Glenn had in the past said that getting a quarterback who could run was a priority. And the Jets literally have 4 quarterbacks who can run. Every QB they have can move. And Martinez, you've seen it with him. If you watched him in college, you saw it there. Coming out of college, I wasn't the biggest fan. I thought he was a better runner than a thrower. Too many turnovers for my liking, but you did like his mobility, his ability to extend plays and pick up big chunks with his legs. But you still got to be able to throw the ball at the end of the day. So he did in the UFL look a little bit better than he did at college. He didn't turn it over as often, but it was still, he's still something that happened at an alarming rate. But if the Jets are hoping to develop him and let him compete for that number 3 spot, and there are some people who feel that the QB3 spot is his to lose, and who knows philosophically what the Jets will do. Not everyone carries 3 quarterbacks. Obviously, it's not a very common thing nowadays. So you would put a guy in your practice squad and hope nobody poaches him. So we'll see who wins that spot. But a lot of people think Adrien Martinez can do it. But I would imagine you're bringing him in. Like I said, it could simply be, hey, we need another arm to throw to these receivers. But it could also be, let's watch them side by side with the guy he's competing with a spot for in Brady Cook. Let's see how quickly they pick up the offense. Let's see how they run the offense. Again, they're not going full speed, all out pads, all that stuff. But I'm sure there will be some pieces of the offense. These guys are going to be getting coached, and see how well they take the coaching. See how detail oriented and able they are to retain information. So Adrien Martinez is the first one, the guy who will be competing for that third quarterback spot. Barring a move for a quarterback. The next guy, punter Austin McNamara. Now, obviously, Thomas Morstead let go, signed today by Robert Saleh's San Francisco 49ers, by the way. Happy for Morstead. Good guy. Wish him the best. But Austin McNamara, the punter they brought in, one of the punters they brought in, he was at rookie minicamp. He's got a couple years in the league, but hasn't punted actively in a game. Averaged 45.99 yards per kick in college. So obviously he can boot it. That was with Texas Tech. And he's one of the guys who will be in the running for that punting job. Again, unless a veteran shakes loose and they prefer to go that route. But it does appear the Jets want to get as young as possible at a lot of different spots and let these guys grow and develop. So you bring in McNamara. The third guy, most of these guys really potential depth pieces, but some level of intrigue for one reason or another, or for whatever it may be. But Jackson Sermon. So here's a guy, another undrafted linebacker who they picked last year, who didn't see the field. But he's got good size, good sound tackler. There's concerns. His arms are a little bit short. Not, athleticism isn't through the roof, but he's a guy who compensates for that by, being instinctive. He's a guy you watch him and you feel like clearly he's in the film room because he's always in the right place. He always seems to have a feel for what's going on. So I think they like him, or I think they wanted to get a look at him because they know that they don't have a lot of depth at that linebacker spot. And Sermon is a guy who could fill that role, who could be a quality special teams guy. So he comes in along with Cole Laval. Now, Cole Laval is a guy, for those of you who don't remember, he's a Hawaii product who was playing in the UFL with the Brahmins, whatever, I forget which, Texas Brahmins or San Antonio, wherever they're out of. But they won the UFL, whatever their championship is. He was a starting lineman on that team. The Jets pulled him in. When I went back and watched him, I went back and watched some of his college film. I watched a little bit of his UFL, some of their games. And I liked him. I came away thinking this guy could be a depth player. Then he comes in the preseason and he had himself a pretty good preseason. I can't remember for sure. I may have said I thought he would make the 53. I'm certain I said that he was at least a sort of dark horse, like he had an outside shot to make the 50. I would be. I'm not. If I didn't say that, I'd be shocked, because for those of you familiar and who remember, around last preseason, I was talking him up quite a bit. I would have liked to have seen him get some reps in some real games, but the Jets bringing him in, and again, it makes sense. Another spot, that interior offensive line. You've got some names. You've got Xavier Newman. You've brought in Myers to compete with Tippmann. You've got some guys who can add some depth, but really get a look at some more guys. And I would imagine, Cole Laval is the type of guy that I look at and say they must be wanting to confirm that he's a quality guy, quality player, because he certainly looked like it in college, looked like it in the UFL, looked like in the preseason last year. And I'm not saying high-level starter. I'm just saying guy who's good enough to play in the league, maybe be a starter at some point. But even if you're talking high-level backup, those guys have a lot of value. Even though they don't steal headlines and a lot of fans don't care and they don't listen and they don't look into it. I think guys like that can have a lot of value. Again, you can, as Jets fans, we should know as well as anybody that you really can't have enough depth along the offensive line, which brings us to the next name on the list. Obena Ezi. I will not be surprised if you're unfamiliar with Obena Ezi. He's not played as a Jet. He was a member of the Kansas City Chiefs for a little bit. He's a TCU product and an international pathway program player, which means the Jets were able to carry him on the practice squad last year without him counting against the practice squad spot, doesn't count against the roster spot. He's a guy who came in prototypical size for a tackle. Watching him in college, I actually went back and watched him at TCU after the Jets signed him. Again, great length. He uses it well in pass pro. You could see where teams would look at him as a developmental player and say, let's bring him on board. The Chiefs did that. He didn't last very long, but then he went to the Jets. Lasted all of last offseason, then comes back in this year for a new regime, and they bring him in to rookie camp. Because look, everyone's excited about Membu and everyone's excited about Olu, but behind them, you've got Warren, who I think some people are giving up on a little prematurely. I'd like to see him with a quality coaching staff, and that goes for a lot of these guys. Max Mitchell, really, to me, and look, this is just my opinion, I think work him at guard or move him on. But I guess look, I shouldn't be unfair to the guy. I did just say that all these guys need to get some proper coaching. But I think Max Mitchell has the ability to play guard. And I think if you move him there, you kind of increase his chances to hang around. This was the name that surprised me most. Ontario Pokey Wilson. Looked at him a little bit after the Jets signed him. He was a Florida State kid. And here's the weird thing about him is that you look at his measurables, you look at his 40 time. Atrocious for a wide receiver. Ran a 4.6. So I'm thinking if you run a 4.6, you've got to be you're not a guy who's going to be putting up big numbers as a average yards per catch guy. Not the case with Wilson. A more than respectable 16.5 yards per catch over his final 2 seasons at FSU. So it's not like he was playing, podunk college. Not like he was playing poor competition and put up some numbers. He was playing. Now, listen, he wasn't a guy who was getting 10 targets a game, but he's putting up 400, 500 yards a season for a couple of years, averaging 16.5 a catch. That's not bad work. That's really not bad. And that's, again, when I remember when they signed him, and I look up info and I'm reading about him before I go to the film, and I see the 40, and I'm thinking, oh, okay, well, how good can this guy be? And he did. He made some catches down the field and showed that he was a factor for Florida State. Now, look, will he be a factor with the Jets? I would say highly unlikely, but at the same time, the wide receiver room, folks, I mean, we've talked about it extensively. We'll talk about it more. We'll talk about it during the season. I think the lack of depth there is going to be a thing. And speaking of lack of depth, yes, the Jets did draft Mason Taylor. Yes, we're all very excited about that. Yes, Jeremy Ruckert is now being paired with his college quarterback, so we're expecting some type of step forward or hoping for some type of step forward in production for Ruckert. However, when it comes to proven, established guys who can get it done at tight end, the Jets don't have any of those. They just don't. So they brought a couple of tight ends into rookie camp. Who did they bring in? Neil Johnson, another UDFA guy they brought in last year. And not a great run blocker, solid pass blocker, decent hands, like solid all-around guy, not great in any one area. Struggles as a run blocker. I would say probably below average as a run blocker. Has some good moments as a pass blocker. And the other tight end they brought in, everybody's favorite athletic super freak, Zack Coons. If I was a head coach, I'm not going to lie. If I was a head coach and I'm taking over a team and I'm somewhat familiar with every guy on the roster, that's one of my first questions is going to be, where's Zack Coons at? How many human beings on the planet at his size can do what he can do in terms of running, jumping? Like the athletic profile, we've talked about it a million times. Perfect RAS score at 6'8", which is just insane. It's insane. So the potential is there. At least I should say the physical traits, the physical tools are there for Zack Coons to be more than just an impact player. However, as we've seen in years past, athletic profiles don't play football. Football players play football. So we'll find out if Zack Coons is a football player with a great athletic profile or a guy with a great athletic profile who won't be playing football for much longer. We're all rooting like hell for him. I mean, how could you not be? How can you not want this guy to break out And it's worth mentioning, I talked about this during the season, and I don't mean to trash the guy, but I feel like he got a free pass because he was such a likable, lovable guy. Ron Middleton, departed tight ends coach Ron Middleton. What tight end developed under him in his time here? What tight end got better? I mean, the Jets were literally, their tight ends were just invisible, with the exception of Conklin, who every once in a great while would have a big game. But he was already that when he got to the Jets. You look at his final year in Minnesota, he put up some good numbers. It might have been his second to last year. Penultimate, if you will. So none of the tight ends did anything under Middleton. So was it that every single one of the tight ends were bad? And not just bad, like invisible. The average fan probably couldn't name the tight ends on the Jets roster. The diehards, us maniacs who study the roster 1 through 90, not a problem. I would guarantee you there are season ticket holders who really love this team that if you said name all the tight ends on the Jets roster, they might give you one or two. It's not a group that's done anything at the pro level. So you hope that someone's going to break out. And again, I would imagine that's why you brought Zack Coons in, to get a look at him and see if he can be an impact breakout guy. All we've heard about Zack Coons is last offseason when Aaron Rodgers talked about coming back from the injury and practicing with the team. That was a name he threw out there, building some chemistry with Coons and throwing him a lot of balls as the scout team quarterback. So then you thought, oh, wow, is he going to be a thing? No. Well, not last year anyway. So will Zack Coons be a thing in the future? We'll have to wait and see about that. Speaking of things in the future, put out a poll on the JetNation Radio Twitter account. Give it a follow, by the way, please, if you will. Follow me there at JNRadio_Glenn. And then you can follow us at JetNation Radio on Twitter. That's going to be topics about the show, a lot of draft highlights, a lot of player polls, Twitter or fan polls about goings on with players. That account's been dormant for years. And I was, a couple weeks ago, I'm like, let's fire this thing up again. Let's get it going. So hop on there. Like I said, at JetNation Radio. But put out a poll. Not a ton of votes because, again, not a ton of followers on that account right now. But ask fans who's going to be the most productive receiver on the Jets roster not named Garrett Wilson. Because let's be honest, the list is not very impressive. But I would say, in my opinion anyway, the three most likely guys are Allen Lazard, Josh Reynolds, and rookie Adrien Smith. And I kind of envision a scenario where Smith maybe gets off to a slow start, but if he just makes a few plays as the season goes on, being the deep threat he is, being the fact that throwing a good deep ball is one thing that Justin Fields does, maybe not as consistently as you'd like, but he does have a cannon for an arm. So that might be a nice pairing. I could see Smith with his speed being a guy who wrestles that job away from Lazard and Reynolds, and maybe from week 9, 10, 11, from that point forward, Smith is your starter. But I asked Jets fans, who do they think will be the most productive receiver not named Garrett Wilson? Josh Reynolds, with 53% of the vote, wins out. Adrien Smith, 24%. Allen Lazard, 11%. And other was 10%. It's not a good group, folks. Or, well, again, not a proven group. But as I have also said a couple times recently, Josh Reynolds, I do feel a lot better about him after watching more of him. And I think if you look at his career, he's been a backup who, when guys get hurt and he steps in and he gets to play, he's productive. So that's all you can ask. When you're bringing in a guy that these coaches are obviously familiar with, they're not expecting him to be a long-term, big-time solution, but he's a guy that they trust and expect him to be able to learn the offense quickly because, his time with Detroit while Eggstrand was there, although we don't know what he's going to run. So that could be a little bit overblown in this case because it's not as if Tanner Eggstrand was running the offense there. And before we go, just want to throw this one out there. Quick thought on these conversations about the potential hypothetical, is it real, is it not, battle at center between Josh Myers and Joe Tippmann. I can't remember if I mentioned it in the last show, but I think Tippmann is the center. I think he wins the job in whatever this battle is, whether it's real or not. There are some people who feel like it's not even a competition, and the team is just saying that to put pressure on Tippmann, which could be the case. My only thing with this thing is don't dismiss it completely out of hand that it's a competition. And like I just said, Tippmann's going to win. That's my expectation. Joe Tippmann, the starting center for the Jets this season, with Myers as the backup. But there are some people dismissing it as laughable, which I kind of understand where you're coming from. But the only thing to me that makes it something where I'm going to not immediately dismiss it is that this is a quarterback, or this is a center who was Justin Fields' center in college. And the Jets are doing everything they can to add weapons for Justin Fields and to make Justin Fields feel comfortable and happy. And having a center in the huddle who he knows could help with that. And again, I can't stress strongly enough because people are crazy. And sometimes you say things, and even just talking about a hypothetical or asking a question, and people take it as you're making a definitive statement about something you expect to happen. Um, all I'm saying is don't dismiss the possibility that it's a legitimate competition. But also, I fully expect Joe Tippmann to be the Jets starting center. I expect him to, well, again, it's tough to say. I mean, I've talked about it ad nauseum. It does worry me that you've got a very young group of offensive linemen, and they're going to be coached by a rookie offensive line coach who has only been a tight ends coach previously. So that's a little bit of a red flag for me. A little bit of a red flag. But speaking of which, I did say I want to, on occasion, throw out there, let you guys know what's going on. I always say hop on JetNation, most active Jets message board on the web, which it is, and you should hop on there. Um, Always like to look for a thread on the front page I like, and there's a good conversation about this offensive line. We know that there are a lot of areas on this team where there are questions, but the offensive line isn't one of them. At least you don't. I mean, the one question is Membu in terms of playing. Of course, you've got the question of AVT's health, which you can have questions about any player's health. AVT, though, of course, given the history. But it's a very good young O line, very good conversation about them on the message boards at Jet Nation. I think the conversation that needs to be had, I tweeted about it a couple weeks ago. If they both play well, both guards, how do you keep them? Can you pay two? Listen, if AVT and Simpson both play at a high level for 13, 14 plus games, they're both going to be commanding top of the market money for guards. Um, Simpson was phenomenal last year. AVT not as good, but still good. If he, plays at or above the level he played last year and Simpson does the same, you're looking at 20 plus million for a couple of guards each. That's 50 million for those two guys while you're trying to re-sign Sauce, while you're trying to re-sign Garrett, while you're trying to re-sign JJ, while you're going to have Will McDonald wrapping up year 3 where he could push for a deal. I jotted the names down earlier. People talk to me about, oh, the Jets have cap space. They've got cap space next year. They do. They do. But just a quick thought. Do they have enough cap space for Sauce, Garrett, JJ, AVT, Simpson, Tippmann, Will McDonald, and Quincy Williams, who wants a new deal? And if Breece Hall has a big year and you want to keep him, you got enough for all those guys? Like, you can't keep them all. You can't keep them. That's a lot of good players. And you can't keep all of them. So we'll see. I mean, I think Breece, in the situation of Breece, if the team is struggling, you just deal him before the deadline. Like, feed him the football nonstop early in the year. Let him put up some big numbers. Let him put some great work on film. And then let a playoff contender that needs a running back call you and offer you a 3, or, that could become a 2 if they make the playoffs. Whatever it may be. A 4 that becomes a 3. Something like that you can get for a guy of his talent level from a team that feels like, maybe they lost a running back, or they're competing, but they don't have a good running back. So maybe that happens. Maybe that's how true. Because again, you're not signing all those guys. That's just not happening. Almost every guy I mentioned on there is a 20 million per year plus guy, and it's what 3, 4. It's like 10 guys. That's two. Yeah. Those 10 dudes will probably combine for $300 million. So they're not all coming back. It's a matter of how the Jets navigate this. Do they trade guys? Do they keep guys? Or who do they trade? Who do they keep? That'll all transpire in the coming days, weeks, months, years in some cases. But that'll wrap this one up, folks. Just like I said, we wanted to look at the 8 players the Jets invited to rookie minicamp to get an extended look. A couple of offensive linemen, which wasn't a surprise. None of them surprises. They have to look at some tight ends. They got to look at their linebackers. These are places where they don't have proven quality depth, and hoping like hell to develop some of these guys to become regular contributors. That'll wrap this one up for me, Jets fans. Have a good one.